Welcome to the A2C Podcast. We're your unfiltered ticket to the world behind high achievers of every kind. No ads here, it's just pure value. So do me a favor and share this if you find some inspiration, motivation, or something else in between. Authentic, no constraints, no limits. Let's go. We keep it loose. We just talk, and if we need to stop and use the restroom, just whatever.
I like it.
I noticed your background's different this time. I think last time you were...
Well, I was. So I shoot all my podcasts from inside my closet. You know, it goes with the whole skeletons from the closet thing.
Right.
So, and it usually that's the place where I can get the most silence without my kids coming in like.
Yeah, except that episode we shot together, and I'd love for you to shout out your podcast, by the way. But you had like fucking Derek or Kevin or Charles, the roofer guy or something.
Yes, they were at my house of all times, power washing the outside, and they just started hitting the window right in my closet with one of those sprayer machines, and all hell broke loose. And I'm standing on like the vanity trying to tell them stop.
I was gonna say that was the best part of the whole thing of our episode was you standing up there and just like, hey, get out of here, skedaddle, scoot.
Well, and you know what the best part is? My other half comes home that day and he's like, I think they missed a spot on this side of the house. And he calls the guy and the guy tells him, yeah, we had to stop because she was screaming at us through the window.
So then you had to have a whole conversation. I can only imagine how that went.
It's all good. House is clean, podcast is done, and we're just keep on keeping on.
That's all you can do sometimes, you know? So, Aimee, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell the folks who you are and what you do and where you're from and why. Like, why do you do that thing that you do?
Yeah, I can. So, obviously, Aimee Ball. I'm in a little town, podunk town, just between New Orleans and Baton Rouge called Springfield. And we probably have, I don't know, maybe a couple thousand people in this town. So it's more probably cows and horses and other things like that than anything else. Alligators, I'm often asked. And I've been in business now for about 14 years. Prior to that, I worked in corporate, did that whole thing. And what's funny about kind of my journey is that I started off looking for a side gig, just like a little side hustle. I was bored and wanted to make a little more money. And eventually that side hustle grew into a flourishing business, which grew into a software company, which grew into consulting, and, you know, it's grew into real estate and all kind of other different ventures. So it's really exciting to see how it's come to fruition over the years.
What do you think the most exciting part of your life is?
Oh, God. So do you want to say exciting or like completely explosive?
Yeah, both. We got time. We've got nothing but time.
I think the exciting part has been really learning who I am as a person. You know, it's so funny when you're 20, of course, you think you know everything. And then you get to 30 and realize you don't, but still think you have more wisdom than the people around you. And when you realize that that's not necessarily a good thing, you start surrounding yourself with people who have more wisdom than you. And then you really start going deep. And it's like, oh, wow, like this wasn't that person 10 years ago. That was actually me causing all these issues. And I was the roadblock. And you start, I think, exploring a little bit more. And that's probably been the most exciting piece is that every time I think I learn something different about myself, which takes me down a whole nother path of exploration.
Right. So what's the most interesting thing you've ever learned about yourself? Like what were you there in the closet? We're going to have to unpack this in the closet thing, by the way. But you're there in the closet and you're like, oh shit, I guess I do. As you sat there and thought about yourself, you know?
Yeah. So that's, you know, the whole human experience is very interesting to me. And that's kind of where Skeletons from the Closet came from. You know, we're really going on like this intimate journey through life and learning about us and other people and the way we work together and communicate. And as you become more self-aware, you can become more socially aware, obviously, which lets you kind of read people, which is always so funny. But I think probably one of the most exciting things is that learning that your struggles aren't necessarily put in your way to make life suck, but more put in your way to teach you lessons. And we are destined to repeat those lessons over and over and over again until they're actually learned.
That's ringing so true right now. This has been like, I haven't been quiet about it. I've told a lot of folks like my following this has been one of my most difficult years, not necessarily financially, but some of those other difficulties created expenses, more than some people make more than a lot of people make in a year. And it's like, here's an extra expense on top of it. And so we've felt it financially, but we've also been fortunate to be able to continue on, right? But it's been a year full of challenges, and I look at it and I've been thinking a lot about that lately, like really leaning into just a relationship with, whether it's a creator or a universe or whatever, just what's bigger than me that's trying to teach me something, right? And that's the thing I keep coming to is like, why the fuck am I so stupid? I have beat my head on this wall so many times. I'm so tired of it. I thought last time I did it, I learned the lesson, but apparently not. Have you had any of those moments, or I don't know, what's your take and what's your thought on that?
Every fucking day. I'm sorry, can I say that on here?
Yeah. Yeah, we can do whatever we want on here.
Every day. Like, just like you said, you beat your head against this wall and you feel like you've solved the problem, and all of a sudden the problem pops up again about a year later. And of course it's wearing a different outfit, and it's in designer shoes, and it's looking all sexy, and you just look right past all those red flags of the same problem that you had before, and you go right down that road and again start beating your head against the wall. And unfortunately, I think part of the problem is that not enough people talk about it. They don't talk about why.
Yeah, do you think that's a big part of why it just perpetuates all the time? Because nobody talks about it, so you never really internalize it. You learn it for the moment, you act right, and therefore your outcome is right for a little while, but then you slip back into old ways because you're not talking about it. Or
I think that's part of the problem. And I think the problem too is that, and I'm sorry, I'm getting over like a little bit of a cold here. So I think that's part of the problem. I think the problem is also that we do internalize it a lot, and we will journal about it, and we'll think about it, and we'll obsess about it. And until we can really voice what's going on inside of us, sometimes until you talk about it, you don't really hear it for yourself, and I think you don't necessarily reframe that situation into what it actually is, because you're still stuck in that old perspective and frame of mind.
So like you're there, you're journaling about it and all these things, and that's just a form of justification to feel better. And it's not until you hear yourself say it, like you're like, how fucking dumb do I sound? Is that kind of what you're getting at? Or
I think it's more along the lines of, have you ever had those situations where you think you have the best idea in the world, and then you start talking to a friend or your wife or, a colleague, and all of a sudden that idea, like you start poking holes in it yourself? Or on the flip side of that, you have a problem and you take it to a mentor, and as soon as you start talking it out, you solve the problem before they even have a chance to answer you. Yeah. I think it's the same way. I think that when we are vulnerable enough to release the things that are weighing on us and all those obstacles and armor and everything else that, Brene Brown talks about, I think it gives you an outlet for other opportunities to come in and help you solve that problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but keep going. So what do you mean by other opportunities to come in and help you solve it? How do those come in? Why do they come in? Where do they come from?
Well, I think it's sometimes from our subconscious. I think a lot of times we already have the answers. We're just not asking the right questions. I think that, we ask very surface level and look for surface level answers, when sometimes you really do have to go a little bit deeper to understand, like, what is actually causing this? Why do I keep repeating this pattern? What need is there that must be filled, that I think is going to be filled with this behavior that I keep repeating?
Right.
And so when we start asking questions around not just the, what the problem is or who the problem is, but why this problem is actually starting, then it forced us to look at a whole other different set of solutions.
I like that. So what was the toughest, most real question you ever asked yourself?
Oh God, in relation to what?
I don't know. You pick.
Probably, am I the problem?
It's applicable in so many ways.
Really is. You know, we so often blame other people and we look for a scapegoat, and whether it's in work or relationships or parenting or whatever else conundrum that comes up. And instead of, like I said, just reflecting and like, okay, well, if I'm part of this, what part am I playing? And sometimes that sucks to look at because you don't like to accept that wrong, that you actually could have contributed to this.
Right. So when you ask yourself, you're there in that moment in the closet, somewhere between the jeans and the blouses, and you're like, am I the problem? What was your answer?
I guess that depends on you know, what the situation is. You know, I think every time we're involved in something, then obviously we have an active part in it. You know, unfortunately, we can't control everything. So I think there's, like I said, another level to that. I have a friend of mine who actually said, and I loved it, new levels, new devils. And when you surface that next level and when you uncover, okay, well, did I have control over this? And if the answer is yes, somewhat, or no, you still have to reflect on whether you reacted the right way, whether you took action, whether you did what you were supposed to do. You know, there's that old saying by one of the philosophers that right is right, even if nobody's doing it, and wrong is wrong, even if everybody's doing it. And sometimes you have to apply that to yourself too.
So I think like one of my problems, one of my character flaws is, and I legitimately mean this, I know like you're sitting in the job interview and they're like, what's your biggest flaw? My biggest flaw is that I care too much. I work too hard. How hard? Too hard. But no, so like when I'm in those moments and I literally teach this in our masterminds, it's own everything. Am I the problem? Yes, I always was. Like, because there's the old saying, the only thing you can change is yourself, your own actions, your own. And so for me, it's just become a habit to where I try and own everything. How was I the problem? Even if I don't legit see it and you know, this is some crazy freaking dude or some crazy chick or some crazy situation or whatever, how am I the problem? But I also feel like that becomes detrimental as well, because I feel like some of the lessons I get to repeat, some of the ones I've been repeating this year, are because I didn't let someone else own it because I owned it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So do you feel like that's, when you said it's detrimental, do you feel like it's too much ownership that you're taking, or it's?
Yeah, I think there comes a point where, because it's like, hey, we have a problem. Really, it shouldn't be my problem, or maybe it's my problem in part, but I'm going to own the whole thing. You know what? I'll figure it out. Carson will figure it out. And so I do, but then I also let those people remain in my life. And so guess what? They re-perpetuate the problem because they never had to go figure it out. I figured it out. And in their mind, they're just like, oh, Carson will go figure it out. Like I trained them to put me back in that situation again, which is really shitty. So sometimes I think I'm just literally in the last couple of weeks, it's so funny we're having this conversation because it's one of the most dominant things in my mind lately is over ownership, if that makes sense. Absolutely. Like your ownership, and I guess it's not over ownership, like every situation, every scenario, every problem, and every success needs to be owned wholly. But it's not for you to own everything. Like, yeah, when your ownership impedes somebody else's ability to own something that they should, it creates future problems.
So are you saying that when you say that, like basically enabling people is what I'm hearing? When you enable people to not perform or to get away with the things they said they would do and they're not doing them because you're doing them for them, then you are facilitating that behavior.
Yeah, I think so. That's exactly it. So it's like, I've lived not my whole life, but most of my adult life in this, how do I own it? Because if I don't own it, I can't control it. And if I can't control it, I can't change it. So if I didn't like the outcome, I need to change it, right? But this year's been a year of old problems, old obstacles resurfacing. And like you said, sometimes it's with the same person. Sometimes it's the same problem with a different person, or a different person with a similar problem. You know, it's now dressed in Prada or whatever. And it's like, holy shit, I over-owned it. And because I over-owned it, what needed to be resolved was never resolved. I I worked 80 hours a week for weeks on end to overcome, or I ate humble pie and crow in situations and scenarios that I couldn't or shouldn't. And because of the humble pie and crow that I keep eating, I'm not moving forward socially, because that will hurt, harm, and hinder your social progress in the circles you're in. If you're always the piece of shit, it's pretty damn hard to climb social circles, you know?
Have you ever thought about why people do that? Just like you're saying, like, why does one person feel like they have to pick up the slack and now enable the other people while someone else will just let the ball drop?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on that, Aimee. I want to know your thoughts. You're the one that's supposed to be talking here. I'm supposed to shut up.
I know. I'm just like, get so excited. I don't know. I think there's a lot of reasons for it. I think that we do and repeat these painful patterns because at one point in time, we developed these patterns of behavior due to a belief programming that we had, and that those behaviors kept us safe historically, maybe kept us from feeling unwanted or hurt or broke or whatever it is. And they're so ingrained in us that we literally have to be cognizant and recognizing that those old behaviors and patterns don't work for us anymore. You know, I can give you a perfect example. I'm not a big journaler. I don't do it every day or anything else, but occasionally I will. Like if I'm having like this, monologue in my head. And one of the things that I noticed that I have a tendency to do, and I literally just made a post about this, I think this morning on Facebook, was that I am a victim of other people's visions. I will have clients, friends, whatever, come to me and they will give me this vision and they're so excited about it that I just want them to win. It's like, oh my God, I want to see you. So I will go all in, do whatever I can to help them. And the last probably 3 or 4 times I've done this, I've committed and done everything I could to help them. And they didn't charge for it because, they were people that I love. And they literally just quit. Like they gave up because it was too hard. It wasn't what they expected. Just reasons that were foreign to me. And so I literally had to take a step back and understand, why the fuck am I playing second fiddle to myself to help other people get ahead? Which sounds kind of selfish, but it's not. And I think in writing it, the reason for this is that because 20 years ago, I had no other choice, right? Like I had to put the vision, my kids and my parents and all these people that I had to take care of before me. And so over the years, over the last 20 years, now that my kids are grown, they don't need a lot and my parents are retired, I'm still in that frame of mind of I just need to take care of everybody. And so I'm repeating these behaviors and getting stuck in these patterns and these loops of people coming to me because that's, I think, the fire I'm putting off. And then I get resentful on the back end and I'm like, why the hell did I do this to myself again? So I think that's part of it. Again, going back to, I think the patterns that we've developed are because those behaviors served us in the past.
So what's the process of resolution? Because there's not really just like a moment. I've come to find that it's not just like you wake up and you're like, no, you swim through some shit. Like you're sailing an ocean on a freaking sea of diarrhea, and it's a fucking journey. You got to Christopher Columbus your ass across a couple oceans, But what's like that North Star? How do you start setting your bearings and tacking sail and making way?
I don't know if there's a one size fits all for everybody. I think it's specific to the person and the situation, but I do know that one of the first things, I don't know if you've ever, like 12 steps is to admit you have a problem. So many people are afraid to say that I got this wrong, or, I went in the wrong direction, or, I think a lot of times people don't want to speak the truth about what's actually happened because they don't want their illusions destroyed, that maybe it could have been their own fault, or that, maybe I did this again. Like I did this same thing I swore I would never do. So I think like I said, the first step is always just to recognize it and to admit it. And I mean, then it's a process of, what actually do you want? I think a lot of people don't have a good vision of that. What do you want? What's it going to take to get there? What sacrifices am I going to have to make? Who am I going to have to cut out of my life? What are the things that I'm going to refuse to do? What are the things that I absolutely require to make this work? And I think once you get clear on that, it's everything else a lot easier. Have you used a good process yet?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out. That's why I keep having these issues. I'm here learning. Like I'm in school right now. Again, kind of like you alluded to it a minute ago. What has served me, I think, it's kind of the feeling I really just feel so strongly about. I came out of grade school and just was in a really shitty, dark place, and what I've been using has served me. It got me out of that dark place. It's helped me grow some I'm not going to say successful businesses, but we're doing all right. We're doing all right. But those things don't serve me anymore, And I think that's the big realization is like it's not the same problems or the same demons I fought back then. They're different demons, but the fact that I'm still fighting demons on the same plane, and it's like, I need to elevate, like different level, different problems. I'm ready for different problems. And that's I think what I've kind of come to is the problems don't go away. I'm just tired of a different look on the same problem. Like I want a different level, different problem. So one of the first things you learn about in business is if you continue to do what you've always done, you'll always have what you always had, or, some cheesy version of that shit. There's a million different versions. And that's kind of the thing. It's like, okay, I've made tweaks, I've made improvements, I've made progress, but it's still another version of my same bullshit. So no wonder why I have another version of the same bullshit. If I want different bullshit, there's bullshit at every level. If I want bullshit, I got to do different things. So that's kind of the thought process I've been going through lately is, okay, what does doing different things, what does that look like? What are those things? What am I going to have to sacrifice? What am I going to have to give up? Who am I going to have to be okay with? Like, okay, here I am. We've come as far as we can go. I'm trying to bring you with me, but you don't want to come. And so I'm pulling like hell, but I'm pulling like hell on a ball and chain that's trying to drag me down to the depths, and no wonder why I can't go to that next level. But then at the same time, you're wrenching like hell to get to that next level, right, Aimee? And then you're looking at that next level and you're tentative because you're like, hey, new level, new problems. So you're trying to figure out what problems am I gonna have and how do I be proactive about those problems while I'm sitting here still wrestling with these problems. Then you get to the end of the day and there you are laying butt ass naked in bed, but you got your New Balances on for some reason. And you're staring at the ceiling and you're like, my God, I got nothing done today but fight problems I don't have yet because I haven't earned them yet, and problems that I should have let go a long, long time ago. And I have nothing left, right? I gave it all.
I think you just hit the nail on the head is that, like you saying, I keep dealing with the same bullshit. And it's like, okay, can I get some, like, I know I'm going to always have bullshit, but can I get some new stuff? Like, just drop it in here. Take this old stuff. I'm done with it, but we're not done with it. Because if we were done with it, like you said, it would either be solved or we would walk away from it. And for whatever reason, we're choosing not to solve it and we're choosing not to walk away. So there's no, like, until we solve that bullshit problem, I'm a big believer that beneath all the bullshit, there are feelings, right? And everybody's like, feelings first. I know, I used to be too. But beneath all those feelings is a need, like I said earlier. And when you meet that need, rather than focus on the behavior, on the bullshit, then you begin to deal with the cause of it and not the symptoms. So like I was saying earlier, I hate that feeling of resentment or bitterness or feeling like I'm devalued when I am trying to help someone accomplish their vision and they quit on themselves. But that's the feeling that I get. The need that I have beneath that is a feeling that I'm taking care of, that the people around me are taking care of. So if I can address that and intuitively know that the people around me are just fine, that they don't need me to save them, that everything's going to be okay, then all of a sudden the behaviors around trying to meet that need, I think will clear up on their own. I don't know.
How do you go from, in your instance, and everyone has their own instances, right? But how do you go from not actually trusting people enough to let them live in their own bullshit so that you can move on to your next level? How do you go from where you're at to that? Because like you just said, that I need to trust them to be okay, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't. So what's the actual tangible work that takes you from point A to point B?
No, that's I think the big conundrum that we all get into is that big old piece of fate and knowing that everybody has free will, right? Everybody has that. Eventually you get to a point where you're not a toddler anymore. You don't need mom and dad to take care of you. And you get to make your own choices. And that's either a gift or a curse for some people. But for you to, or for me in this case, it's a control issue. It's me wanting to control them in order to make sure that they're okay. If I can hold the reins just a little bit longer, I can make sure they're okay. But then you never give them a chance to jump. You never give them a chance to experience, to do it themselves. So you always have to have faith that what you've done is enough and just let them fly, right? Push them out the damn nest and let them fail and be okay with that. Which is so fucked up and funny at the same time, because I am the biggest, you have to fail 1,000 times. You have to experience things to know what you like. And here I am going, oh my God, don't hurt yourself.
So what happened in your childhood to where you can't bear to see somebody hurt themselves?
I've thought about that actually. What childhood trauma do I have? I know.
Don't a Slim Jim.
I actually had a brick thrown at me by my cousin, but that's,
Well, shit, that'll do it. That'll do it.
I think it was more along the lines I watched my parents struggle. It always felt as a kid, not that I couldn't ask for something in the sense of can I have this toy, but more along the lines that I wouldn't, because I felt like my parents felt shame telling me no. And I knew that they couldn't afford a lot of things and they couldn't do for me that my grandparents did a lot. And so I think maybe, and I probably need a hypnosis for this shit, is that some of that as a child was me taking care of them, saying, I don't need anything. I can do this myself. I'll make straight A's. I'll pay for college. I won't be a burden. And it seemed like every other relationship that I went through in my life was very similar, where it was, don't be a burden, take care of your family, make sure everyone's supported, and just do what you have to do, to keep the wagon moving. Does that answer your question?
Kinda. I have to kind of interlude the conversation though, because you mentioned don't be a burden several times, right? And I find it so funny because it's kind of a Southern thing. I've got one of my best friends lives out in the Carolinas, and one day, this was just a couple months ago, we were talking about some dude that was pissing me off, and he's like, you want to know how to hurt him? Just hurt him. And I'm thinking he's going to be like, call him a pussy. Every man has to check himself if you call him a pussy. And he's like, nah, you just tell him he's acting like a burden. And I was like, shit, such a Southern thing. So it's so funny that, here you are now, just burden. But it also speaks to me because I watched my parents struggling, and the goal of my childhood was don't be a burden. The goal of my adolescent life was don't be a burden. Being a young adult, how do I not be a burden? So no wonder why, as I figured out how to not be a burden, the automatic translation is, okay, now I'm not a burden. How do I help you not be a burden? Instead of some other conversation.
It's almost like we have to go from not being the burden to being the savior. It's very altruistic, don't you think?
Yeah, no, it really is. And it's not like Messiah syndrome or anything like that, but it's like, it's almost like, hey, I figured out how to not be the burden. So let me help show you how to not be the burden. Even when you are being a motherfucking burden, I will step in and do the extra work so that you don't have to go home feeling like a burden, because I know what it feels like to be a burden. And it's worse than being called a pussy. Yeah, it's worse than being called a pussy. It's the worst thing there is.
It is. So, do you think that people in the coaching and consulting space are more prone to this burden savior dilemma?
Yeah, I do. Not all of them. I think Well, no, I think the majority of us, frankly, it just manifests differently. So I was talking to this one dude a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about, I got into coaching and consulting because of the money, frankly, of the money and the fact that I like being on a pedestal, right? And I was like, shit, that is not why I got in. I lose money. Like the mastermind we run is making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. And we're only a couple years into this. We've spent $0 on marketing, but I'm still like 15, 20 grand a month out of pocket just to keep the thing afloat. Like I do it for the love of it. I do it to help keep other people from being a freaking burden. But that is just that savior syndrome, as you put it, manifesting in a different way. For him, he wants to be on the pedestal. He wants the credit. He wants the whole reason we called our stuff. It's not, coaching by Carson Porter's signature series or anything like that. Like it's Rev Agency. It has a whole brand. The sooner I can get my face off it, the better. But it all still stems back to the same place, which is I don't trust other people to help themselves out of a hole. So here I've got to be helping them out of the hole because somebody's got to do it.
And I think that's where it comes from. It's a lack of trust. Is that because a long time ago, you felt like you couldn't trust people to do what you needed to be done for you, that now we don't trust people to do it for themselves. I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Which sucks too, by the way, because, and you've seen this in the coaching and consulting space, you have those people that come with you and they needed you in that moment. And now they're really excelling and accelerating. They become like your best friends. Shit, you got them teaching half your courses at this point. Huh? But you find yourself like almost feeling like you're missing out. Like they're the ones getting to have all the fun because you're still here stuck, not trusting people, not trusting the other people who it's not that they couldn't, it's that they wouldn't, instead of continuing on that journey with these badass people that you met that will, and they are. And I don't know if you had some of those experiences. That's kind of a realization when you're like, God, that it's not just the pupil becomes the master. It's not that. It's the people I want to do life with are busy doing life, and I'm still here trying to save people.
That's it. I think we get so focused on putting others first that we start teaching them that we come second. And that's the basic premise of what's happening. I mean, can you imagine? I would assume it's the same way for a teacher in school, when you wanted to teach these kids the next thing, but you can't because there's one or two kids in the class that are holding the rest of them back. Like, I guess that's why it's been such a problem in public school nowadays. And well, that whole thing is fucked anyway. But, how do you have to continue to progress? Like I feel like you can't, and I know some people say you should, as the shepherd, you should take the herd with you. But sometimes the herd's fucking broken. And sometimes they just have to be left behind. Like you said, you can't enable them anymore. And they have to just get the trust that they'll step it up.
There comes a point when the herd refuses to follow that they deserve to have their fucking ass eaten by the wolves. And because your freaking moron ass refused to do the work to follow a more productive path, you're going to get eaten up and devoured by the wolves. And now the rest of the herd gets to move on safely because the wolves are busy with you punk ass little bitch. But people like you and me, Aimee, here we are. We're holding the whole herd back for that punk ass little bitch. Hey, don't get eating. The rest of us will starve so that you don't get eaten. And
I have to say, I need to remember that my motives are not always as altruistic as they seem to myself. There are times when it's, I'm looking for a scapegoat too, where it's like, hey, do you want to do this, new project together, this new venture? Let's do it together. Because I know secretly, if I fail with somebody else, at least I'm not failing by myself. Okay, we can both joke about. It's like we failed in community. Whereas it's a lot harder for me to do something all alone in my house, and it's like failing by myself. It's this little devil on your shoulder it makes it seem much harder for you to move forward with stuff. And so I think a lot of times too, as much as I'd like to think that, my motives are just so good and they're so genuine and I just, care about these people getting further, there's probably a harsh truth to that there's a little bit of fear and mistrust in myself and my own decisions and things. And then again, to go through the process of, so who's the problem here? Is it them or is it they?
Maybe it's everybody, you know?
I think everybody is a little fucked up in their own way.
I don't think that. I've come to know that. I've prayed about it, a spirit of God, which God? I'm still trying to figure that out. But a spirit of a God has borne witness to me. Everybody is fucked up.
Amen to that. That is the ultimate truth.
Gosh, it's so damn crazy. That's actually a comforting thought too. When I'm laying in bed with those New Balances on and I'm like, God, I'm fucked up and it's awful, but so's everybody else.
That's all right. Join the crowd.
So what's some of your big projects right now? What are you working on?
We're working on, well, I still have, obviously, I have Trust Keg, all this stemming around the foundational aspects of trust that people are missing in their life, starting with numero uno is how this all came to be. We're working on a new project right now, new venture. We're actually about to launch it. A lot of my background is in behavioral psychology and understanding why people do the things they do and how that's impacting their lives. And of course, I typically use myself as the main subject. And so with all these experiments anyway. And so what we're doing is something, we've designed a software called Hero Hub. We're still in the finishing touches of that, but the process around it is going to be Hero Habit. And just to give you a little bit of background, I've done coaching for years, and most of it's centered around digital marketing, how to build online businesses, sales, prospecting, lead generation, things like that. And the challenge with it is that, well, number one, how technology is, it's changing day after day. So just keeping up with the changes. Number two is there's so much information as well as disinformation. People are just overwhelmed. And what I started seeing was that the people coming into buying these courses, they didn't even know what SEO was. They didn't know what the first thing about setting up a Facebook page, much less running Facebook ads. They didn't know that they needed to actually do something to generate leads that people wouldn't come knock on their door. So what I decided to do, I actually shut down a lot of the programs, and I said, I need to figure this out. I need to figure out why people are failing, why people are investing money in something that they hate and they're never going to do. So with Hero Habit, basically what I've done is taken a lot of the behavioral psychology and looking at exactly how they're wired. Are they wired for success, or are they wired for interaction? Are they wired for tradition? Are they wired for rules and policies and regulations? Like, what does this makeup look like? And if we can take that and apply it to the way that they manage their life, like the business that they're in, the tasks that they do, the relationships that they have, like how do we understand this better, the human, to make them more successful in a quicker way? And so through this Hero Habit, everybody that comes into it is going to be tested. They are going to get access to everything I've ever done, simply because, for free, simply because so many people want to know how to make money online or how to build their brand or whatever else. And it's like, no, I don't think you should have to invest in something like this big exorbitant amount when you don't even know if you're going to like it. So go through it, look at a few things. You like it, cool. You can go get further information. You don't, cool, go over here, whatever. But with the Hero Habit, what we're teaching them is to understand themselves, understand what are my needs, what are my behaviors, why do I do the things that I do? Why does this person at work walking up to the water cooler make me want to punch them in the face? Like, why does this happen? And so when you can start to understand that, you can start to look at the places that are breaking down, whether that's, with your spouse, with your kids, with the work that you're doing or not doing. And then you can start to put some structure around it and fix it.
So are you relaunching, and like you have a test? What does that test look like? Like, it's
an assessment. So it's basically, we call them in the marketing world quizzes. It's like a 50-question quiz. You can do it in about 7 minutes or so. And it basically looks at, it's situational. So it'll look at different things like, am I more likely to go out with a group of friends on a Tuesday night that I haven't seen in a long time? Or am I more likely to make sure that I stop when the light turns yellow in preparation of it turning red? Like it, and those are just random examples, but it's very situational like that. And based on the answers that are chosen and not chosen and the way they all interrelate, it tells us a lot about the person as a whole.
Do you have any questions to like? So I've found in the past with us, we had two types of people. We had the type of person that answered it because it's who they wanted to be. And then we had the type of person that answered it because that's who they are. And so we realized like, okay, we've got to have some additional questions in between that let us know who the hell they actually are. So we know we should be looking at that like that's who they want to be versus that's who they are. Like all these people are like, oh, I want to go out with friends. Yeah, but your fucking loner ass is eating Cheetos on the couch, beating dick. Stop it. Stop it. That's who you want to be. Answer this appropriately. And it becomes so impossible to help people because even with the quiz, you just don't know what's true. Like, have you run into that yet? Or do you do anything for that?
So we used to do this in corporate. And so, of course, in a big, I work for a Fortune 1000 company. And like you said, people take these interview assessments and they will answer the questions in a way that makes them the best fit for the job. So you have to create outliers, like questions that they don't know how to game. And if they can't game all the questions, then the test always turns out right. So it may be, and I'll give you an example. Like a lot of times when people are picking questions that are, let's say you have a line chart, okay? And it's 1 to 10. And it might say, okay, 1 is most like me, 10 is least like me. And you have the word is trusting. They might put, I'm very trustworthy. That's, an 8. And then the next one is, or let's say they have 4 options to choose from. Pick the one that's most like you and least like you. Well, trusting is most like me and assertive is least like me. What we found is that those least like me responses tell us more about the individual from a natural state than the most like me ones do.
Maybe that's the problem with my quizzes, because my quiz is like, I try and do the same thing. I got to break the mold. I got to get you out of your own head. And so I'm like, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being trusting, 1 being I'm a fucking blender. Which are you? And, they're like, what are you even talking about? And I'm like, well, if you lost a hand, you had to replace it with a kitchen appliance, which one would you choose? I don't even know where I'm going with that question. They're sure as fuck out of their head, but I'm out of my mind. Maybe this is my whole problem, Aimee.
But yeah, you definitely have people that are going to try and game it any way you do it. But if you can people have a tendency to think, okay, like you said, they know or they think they know what they're most like, but they really don't. So they'll choose them, and the mixture of all of them with the most like me questions and the least like me questions brought together, we can make it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, I like essay style questions rather than multiple choice. I want to know what they would actually say, So like if I ask somebody, what type of appliance would you replace a hand with if you lost a hand? And I give multiple choice, then they're kind of put in that path. But if I just ask it, leave it open-ended. If they're like, oh, a blender, a microwave, a stove, I know they're basic. If they're like wipe warmer, I'm like, oh shit, this person's got it. They've done the thinking. They've been there on a cold day looking at a bag of wet wipes wondering, what am I going to do? And they've thought this through. So I know I like essay style questions myself where I just get them to talk. I want to see how somebody talks, how they, how do they write? How do they communicate as opposed to what do they answer? Do you feel like that's less effective or more effective, or what's been your experience?
I think that's effective for like an interview when you're doing hiring, when you're doing firing. Obviously, you want them giving you their short answer responses to understand how they communicate, the way they think, things like that. But when you're talking about behavioral assessments and you're looking at natural behavioral traits of people, then it's a little bit more scientific. So you don't need to be as subjective or worry about their subjective responses or what their perspective is. You can really look at how they react in these different situations, with the most likely and least likely, to kind of put them into, and I hate to say pigeonholing, but it's basically pigeonholing them. And that's where assessments go wrong. So like from a corporate perspective, we would give them behavioral assessments in order to figure out if they were a good fit to the role we're hiring for, which is okay. But a lot of times what happens is if you rely on that alone, you miss out on a lot of opportunities where people could be really good hires in a different spot, or for that spot, just the role needs to be changed for them or something. So with this, the goal isn't necessarily to understand how the person thinks, but more how they behave under certain circumstances. So if I give you this pen and tell you go sell this pen, are you going to take this pen and go run down the street and try to sell it to the neighbor? Are you going to sit there and have a conversation with me about how, oh my God, this pen is so cool. Like I had one just like it when I was little. Or are you going to ask me, well, what are the rules of the game? Like lay out like what the process is. What rules do I have to follow? Those are three very different behavioral styles.
Yeah, no. For me, the sell me this pen thing, it's such an interesting question. And I think the only way to sell somebody a pen is simply, listen, I have this pen. You need this pen so that you can put your name on that piece of paper and change your life for forever, for the better. But I have this pen. I'm getting up and I'm walking out of here in 5 seconds with this pen. This is my pen. It can be your pen. How bad do you want this pen? And I'll change your life. And it just changes the conversation. But no, I get what you're saying. Behaviors. I don't know. I've struggled so bad. I don't love DISC assessments. I don't love pop tests. The crystal assessment drives me fucking batshit crazy because now you have 32 assessments to go through. And it's like, well, I'm a 32B BR4Q. And it's like, well, I'm an LBD 7.
Then you have the enneagrams and the Myers-Briggs and what color is your parachute? I do like the DISC assessments. I do. We use a lot of the science behind the DISC in order to do what we're doing. Difference is I don't like the way the DISCs are formatted for people to read. So I feel like they're very rigid and like, this is the kind of person you are. This is the kind of position that you should be.
I feel like, yeah, for me, and maybe it's just been my own experience, but we've had periods of times where we invested into programs like that and we didn't. And unequivocally, I've talked about this with my wife even, unequivocally, the times we relied on empirical data from placement tests and behavioral tests, and those are the worst hires I've ever made. The times that I sat down and talked to a person and hired based on what I felt, those have always been the best. Always. Most profitable, most productive, good relationships to this day. And I'm not saying I'm great at hiring. I've just found, or we've had at least to this point, better outcomes from gut instinct, frankly, than we have from empirical data. And so it's been a hard point for me. It's been a hard sell. There's been times I've employed HR firms and paid them thousands of dollars a month to do recruiting and all these tests. And then everybody they send over is like, well, that's a cuck and that's a fuck and that's a pussy. But this person here, they were bagging my groceries, but they talked to me. Turns out to be the best employee I've ever hired, So I don't know. What are your thoughts and sentiments on that?
I agree that a lot of times personality, behavioral assessments, they're used very incorrectly. What should be told, like even with a DISC analysis, this isn't an indicator of whether someone is or is not going to be successful in a role. Just because it says this person's results oriented doesn't necessarily mean that they have ambition, right? So let's take somebody who is a high D. They're results oriented. Everything in their profile tells you that they're going to be a great cold caller, right? But little Jimmy has been a dick from the day he was born. And he was bred with a silver spoon, and mommy and daddy have enabled him. So yeah, he has a drive for results because he's been bred that way. And he'll work for him, but he works like such an asshole and rubs so many people the wrong way that he never makes the sale.
Right.
So it's not only getting the assessments done, it's understanding what the story tells you based on the situation that you're looking to the results for.
So that's the genie trick. So how do you find somebody because most entrepreneurs, most business owners, most folks that might be willing to invest into this stuff, right? They are not interpreters of these assessments and these programs. But from my experience, neither are most HR, the people administering them and wanting to administer them the most, they are not. They are even worse off when it comes to interpreting that data. Where do you find, how do you find what is the right answer? How do you put good people in your life based on data and not dumbassery?
Well, I mean, I think it's, if you're looking for the answer to, I didn't even talk.
Was that Alexa?
You can Google Home or whatever.
The weather's about to change.
And weather's so bipolar down here that got me all screwed up anyway.
Did you see the tornado forecast for that whole like literally from New Orleans, Baton Rouge, all the way up into like Minnesota? It's just like for the next 3 weeks, basically none of you are going to make it through this. So this is goodbye.
Yeah, I never watched the weather. I probably should now.
At this point, don't. It's worse than flipping between Fox and CNN back in 2020.
Well, let me answer your question. I don't think that you can look at any analytical test result and say this or is not a good person. I think that is a decision that if you're looking for, let's say I'm looking for the perfect boyfriend, right? I'm not going to look at his DISC analysis and be like, oh my God, this is such a great guy.
He's so results driven.
Oh my God, I wonder if you're going there. It's not that
I know where you were going, and I'm glad. Yeah, stop it. You stop it.
I don't think it's going to tell you whether, they're a good person, but I think it's going to tell you, like I said, how they handle certain environments. If they work better in fast-paced environments, slow-paced environments, how they relate to other people. If they get frazzled real easily, if they're working in an environment with a lot of change. I am very change-oriented. I'm pretty extroverted. I like results, but I like to achieve results while having fun. So for me, working from home, working in an office all day by myself gets a little monotonous and can make me want to pull out my hair. So I know in the afternoon when my family comes home that I need to either go for a walk, I need to do something to get out some of this cooped up energy before they come home, or we're going to go out to dinner tonight, or we're going to go to the grocery store because I have to get out the house. Otherwise, I'm going to be a complete bitch and continue in this cycle over the next few days. I'm going to burn out. Not because I'm doing a lot of work, but because I'm stuck in an environment that's not conducive to who I am. So like I said, you really have to look at what you're using it for, what the application is, what the goal is. And for us, as far as the hero habit is concerned, our main goal is for people who take this assessment, who go through it, to just have a better understanding of themselves, to be able to say, that's why I get pissed off every time this happens. That's why I'm so burnt out at work. It's not because I'm doing all of Sally's shit that she's not doing. It's because I have somebody questioning me every 5 minutes about doing the shit.
Yeah, so here we are back at the beginning of our conversation when everyone was just like, wow, they're talking about deep, depressing stuff. But no, it's self-actualization. How could an assessment help you about, how could realizing who and how someone else is help you if you can't compare that against who and how you are? And that makes sense. That's the failure of all these HR firms. I haven't had a single HR firm that I've ever hired that has been like, hey, who are you? How are you? How do you work? Let me have you take this assessment, but me taking an assessment, someone else taking an assessment, looking at the fact that they're here on the scale and I'm here on the scale means we're transposed, we're across the scale from each other, so we should balance each other out. No. Yep. You didn't even bother to sit down and be like, how's your day? Do you tend to be an angry person? Yeah, I fucking get angry and then I make decisions. I need somebody that can just roll with that.
Yep, that's exactly right.
But that doesn't show up on a test.
No, it doesn't. It does not.
So what's your end goal? What's the goal? Not necessarily for the business, or what are you trying to get to in life?
It's a great question. It changes every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, sometimes every day.
Those damn New Year's resolutions.
Screw it. I don't do New Year's resolutions. Do you?
On and off. It's less like resolutions and more like I've been wanting to do this anyways. Or I've been doing this. Let me recommit. And now it's a good time to reflect, and just like going to church is a good time to eat some stale ass bread, drink a little water, pretend to like really, it's almost just that reinvestment. You know what I mean? So sometimes, but other times, no. I don't know. We're hit and miss.
Yeah. I don't do New Year's resolutions as far as the future goes. I'm not a great goal setter as far as, you have people who are like, what's your 5-year vision? What's your 10-year vision? And I tend to stay away from those only because, or at least keep them very big and as far as size and scope goes. I know I want a retirement plan business as far as something I'm going to sell and exit. I know I want an income business, something that I can kind of dabble in and have fun along the way that's going to give me some cash flow. But, life-wise, so much changes. The more I've started to trust in my decisions and give other people some rope to hang themselves with, I've realized that there's so much that we don't have control over. For me to set a 5 or 10-year vision, I'm focusing on the wrong things. I have to focus on what's more in the present with a dream for the future and being more adaptable to shifting my paths as I do that. So a lot of what I focus on is, how do I just keep enjoying everything I'm doing as I'm doing it? How, when these patterns start showing up, can I break them quicker? So a lot of what I'm doing is just more on learning. This year I focused a lot more on understanding some of the spiritual sides of life, which are very interesting. Took a huge wormhole down human design. Next year, I'm really focused in on more in terms of people reading, cult mentalities, and how that just intrigues me so much. So I'm going to kind of learn about that and how to apply it to different areas. And I'm going to be a cult master or anything. I just want to understand the psyches behind some of these things on both sides.
I'm going to send you out some robes and a silver mask.
Please don't. I'd be the worst cult leader in the world. I'd be like, why don't you want to follow me?
I'd be a worse cult leader, or I'd be a bad cult leader for a different reason. I never could get the amount of sugar in the Kool-Aid quite right. So
God, right? I know, I'm not a role follower either. But yeah, that's kind of what's on the horizon as far as, things for me. I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time. I did buy a slaughterhouse though. So that's definitely.
You bought a fucking slaughterhouse. Okay, so this is all right, the whole fucking conversation just changed. You bought a goddamn slaughterhouse.
I did.
A murder factory. And look at me, I'm not a vegan, but that's the most interesting phrase I think I've heard in a long time.
I am a proud slaughterhouse owner.
I would challenge you to introduce yourself that way next time you meet a stranger.
Well, I own a slaughterhouse. I love it. Say that on stage next time.
I'm sorry, what was your name?
No, it was one of those things it's one of those opportunities that I couldn't pass up. So there's this slaughterhouse. It's been out of production since 2017. And Jason calls me one day. He owns a real estate brokerage, and he says, hey, we invest in a lot of real estate. So somebody called me. They said they had this slaughterhouse for sale. They wanted to know if I wanted to buy it. I'm going to go take a look at it. And he calls me back from the slaughterhouse. He's like, this place is fucking creepy. I'm getting the hell out of here. There's no way I'm buying this. I am not interested. And I was like, this has to be cool. I want to come see it. So I go over there. And when I tell you, it was the weirdest thing. I pull up and I walk to the back of the property and I walk inside, and it was like, I have to have this. I need this. I need this whole place. So within a week, I bought the slaughterhouse. So I do have some equipment in there. So if you know anybody that needs slaughterhouse equipment, I'm willing to negotiate. But I don't exactly know what I'm going to do with it yet. So we've been cleaning up the property. It's on about 4 acres. Huge, big draping oak trees. We've knocked down some stuff. I'm going to renovate it. But my plan is to clean the land and make it so all the little animal souls can go to heaven or wherever they go. And I'm going to get new animals that I slaughter. Like grass puppies and goats and hedgehogs.
The place has a history. It's only going to last so long. You're going to have one bad day. Some of that equipment's not going to be sold off, and some poor little billy goat.
I'm going to sage the shit out of that joint.
Oh my God. This is great.
It's really cool. I have a video on Facebook. You should go look at it.
I'm going to have to look at. So the slaughterhouse is going to become a sanctuary for slaughtered souls.
I wouldn't say that. Just maybe like, just have a little cool place that I can have some little animals to play with and go and walk around, and maybe I really don't know what the hell.
Deep freeze, like, hey, come on in here.
Keep getting asked these questions, like, what are you doing with the slaughterhouse? And like, I just don't know yet. I just feel like one day it's gonna come to me. Maybe when I'm playing with my goat out in the yard one day.
I mean, you could do a Halloween house with it.
That is what everybody says. My son was like, we need to make it a haunted house or a paintball place. And my whole thing is like, I don't necessarily need to make money with it. And I kind of want to keep it to where like people don't come in all the time. You know what I'm saying? I don't know.
And it's almost kind of cool. Just be like, I've got a slaughterhouse.
It really is.
We don't do much with it, but we fucking could. So don't piss me off.
I love that.
Nobody's bought the equipment yet. I've got the knives. I've got the deep freeze. I have plastic tarp doorways.
I have a giant smoker that's 12 by 12. I did think about making that into like a sauna.
The smoker? My God, that is so morbid. 50 years of smoked meats. 30 years of stewed. I mean, pretty badass. That's pretty badass. Kind of want to buy a slaughterhouse now.
I know, right?
I mean, where to start? I'm gonna have to look for some southern real estate.
Sometimes you get more than you bargain for.
Out here, out west, like the slaughterhouse goes out of business, we tear it down, build a condominium so you can ski at the slopes.
Well, I told you, this is a small town and there ain't many condominiums going up around here.
But, oh my God, slaughterhouse condominiums on Airbnb.
I did think about like doing like an Airbnb where it was like creepy and you're sleeping in the sofa.
Yeah. And like you come in, you check in, maybe you get a little tour and it's like, and this is where we cut their necks.
See, I can't even do that. Like,
and you're sleeping right over there.
Like, this is so sad that they like drained the blood here.
Right. And it went down this drain. By the way, your shower is just underneath us here.
It puts the lotion in the basket.
Yeah, it puts the lotion on its skin is what the fuck it does. My God. How did we get on this topic?
I don't know.
I feel like you just cut the conversation where it was and just had to tell me you bought a slaughterhouse.
It is so exciting.
When did you buy this?
A couple months ago.
Okay, so this is still fresh. You say like, it's fresh. So is the scent.
It actually doesn't stink, funny enough.
No?
No, I guess because it's not been active in, 7 or 8 years.
So that, I don't know why, but that kind of reminds me. I was just in Nashville a couple weeks ago with some friends from, our mastermind. We do these quarterly meetups for the folks at the top level. And there's not a ton of us there, but we're in Nashville and we found our way over to Printer Street, if you're familiar with Nashville. Which is like,
off of like Broadway?
Yeah, off of Broadway, but it's like this back alley. It's kind of like the old Speakeasy alley, right?
Yep, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And there's this little, like we all had our wives with us there, and what do you call it? I'm having a brain fart now. There's like this, the B word, the show, feather hats and scantily clad people.
Oh, boudoir?
No, it wasn't a boudoir. It was burlesque.
Burlesque, yes.
Right? So there was this burlesque spot. And funny enough, it was all the wives that were like, oh my God, we got to check this out. All the husbands were like, no, I don't know if we should. So like we roll into there and they only do burlesque at like 11 p.m. We're all old and it's like by 6 p.m. I'm looking for a bag of M&Ms and I want to go to bed, But it's like 7 or 8. We roll into this joint. It's like a shotgun type of building, single level, really old, kind of swanky, like mobster type bar, right? Like speakeasy kind of vibes. And there's no burlesque show going on. They're like, oh yeah, it's later, but we do dinner. Absolutely. I think that was probably some of the best lobster bisque I've ever had. But we're in there, we're joking around, and the waitress starts telling us the story. She's like, oh yeah, we've only been open for like 8 years. And it's like, nah, that's bullshit. This place is old. It's been around. It's like, well, no. It was open in the 40s and then shut down in 1998 because an employee decided to rob the owner and murdered him on the table. And she like points at the table we're sitting at. She's like, literally took his life, and it was closed for 17 years. And then, just a few years ago, they renovated it, reopened, and so here you are. And so anyways, you're talking about like, oh yeah, there's no smell. It was out of business for a while. That's for some reason with that.
It made you think?
Yeah, there was no smell there. There was no smell, just good lobster bisque and apparently a show later on. But
you know what's funny though, Nashville, we had went to a show too while we were there. We went for like the Chris Stapleton concert this summer. And I love improv and comedy shows and stuff like that. So I find this improv show. I'm like, oh, it's going to be great. And weirdest thing ever. We take an Uber, go to this improv show. And when I tell you, like, I never get up and walk out of places. It was so bad. I looked over at him and I was like, do you get this? Like, I don't get this. And everybody's laughing. So I feel like, am I missing the joke? Like, am I supposed to be laughing? And he's like, I don't get any of it either. Like, let's get the hell out. So I was wondering, like, if it was just maybe locals and all their friends and family came to support them. But have you ever been to something like that where it's like,
oh my God, yeah.
I need
where
to get
you're wondering if you're the only one that, if you're wondering, like, am I the only one that missed the shrooms on the way in the door? Or
get the hookup? Like, did I not get the VIP guys? What's going on here?
I do that all the time. I'm so hit and miss. Like, I either love it or I just hope your kids get bad grades. You're so awful. I just don't have forgiveness in between. I don't have a place where I can fake a smile. So no, I've learned in my life to pregame those scenarios just in case, Rodney Carrington, comedian, one of my favorite comedians, always had this joke like, if you're such type of person, you better have a joke book in your back pocket just in case. And I feel like that's me, except the joke book might be like a flask with some whiskey, just in case. If this shit's bad, I'm going to have my own show.
All right. Entertain myself.
That's what I do. That's what I do. But how long have you and your husband been married?
I am not married. I'm happily divorced twice.
Oh my God. Well,
twice removed.
I apologize for the assumption.
No, but I do have it's so fucking weird to be 42 and dating somebody because it's like, what do you call each other? I'm like, are you like...
You call him Jason, from what I hear.
I say Jason. I'm like, my other half. I've said my lover. And he's like, please don't say that. But no, we go together. We, have blended families. We've both been married and divorced. And so that's not like something we're not 19, like, okay, where's the hitching post, buddy?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been together about 3 years now and life is good. 5 kids between us.
Yeah. Hey, I apologize for the assumption. That's my bad.
Okay. Assume it. It doesn't matter. I feel like I'm married, so it doesn't matter.
In some states, you'd already be common law at this point. So,
but Louisiana is weird. See, we do everything different by Napoleonic code because we think our shit don't stink.
That's right. You've got that whole you've got that like more Creole version of Quebec. So
got it. There is no common law, and we frown upon everything.
About everything.
You ever been to Louisiana? Like it's so.
I've driven through like the corner and that's about it. So,
what's so funny about Louisiana is that the majority of people from Louisiana have never left Louisiana except maybe to go to the coast and go to the casino in Biloxi or hit, Destin or something. But like getting on planes and you just don't find a lot of big travelers down here. And so my kids they grew up traveling with me. And my daughter went to Austin for college. She's going to graduate next year. And I said, well, are you going to come back home? She's like, fuck no. She said, I'm never moving back to Louisiana. It's a great state. It's, we have good people. It's just, there's just a lot of great places in this country. And until you start exploring, you really don't get a good understanding of what that looks like. But it is.
Yeah. I also think it's super healthy for somebody fresh out of school, like getting ready to start their life. For some folks, it's fun. Not just fine, but like it's perfect to just do it right there at home, born and raised, whatever. But I don't know. There's a lot of folks. For me, it was really good to get out. I needed to get out and just experience different things. And it's amazing. How different the world is. My wife and I were just talking about this the other day that it's funny how Europeans come over here and they're like, holy shit, this is huge. You could drive in one direction for 3 hours and still be in the same state. And out west here, you can drive one direction for 3 hours at 85 miles an hour and stop. I mean, our speed limit is 80. And And they're like, holy shit. But it's like, it really is. If we were in Europe, you go from one state to another, that's a different country. It's a different culture. It's a different language. But here in the States, we're just like, it's the States. It's the same until you actually go travel. And you're like, it is different. Totally different.
It's very different. I've obviously, like you, met people all over the country. And it's so funny how different culturally they are, from Louisiana to Kansas City to the West Coast, and then up to, New England area. It's just, even the accents, so we say different languages. Sometimes it almost is. If you get down to South Louisiana, Southwest, it is the different language. Sometimes I need subtitles on these people.
Yeah, South Louisiana. I spent some time in Central Florida, and there's a lot of bayou in Central Florida, surprisingly. I didn't think there would be that much, but it was a different world.
It is. But I agree with you on the experiences. I think every child that has the opportunity. I literally had this conversation with my 18-year-old yesterday. He's going to be graduating high school in May, and he's not planning on going to college. And I said, what if I give you like a $30,000 budget for a year for you when you get out of high school? And you can travel, pick up odd jobs, go learn about things, see places, and just explore. And he's like, why would you do that? I said, because, buddy, I have a hard time with the fact that you've been sitting in a class for the last 18 years being told what you need to do, when you need to do it, who you can talk to, when you can't talk, and then just telling you, okay, now based on what you've learned, you need to make a decision that's going to be declaring the rest of your life. I think it's bullshit. And I would much rather you take this time to have different experiences and learn and see what's out there, and blow the money if you blow it, and then make a choice as to not what you want your life to be, but what would you like to learn more about, and go into that. You always change. So I agree with you.
I like that, because it's amazing. $30,000 to an 18-year-old. That's enough money to go somewhere, experience new things, meet new people, fall in love and get your heart broken, find something you love to do, and then realize you hated it all along. Like, it's amazing how far that'll go at that age. And yeah, who are you? You don't freaking know. I remember sitting there in high school. Seems like a lifetime ago, but I remember sitting there and they're like, the decisions you make today are so important and so imperative. They're going to impact you the rest of your life. And it's like, there's some, like, if you go get fucking herpes, for sure. No shade to those that have herpes, but like, there are some decisions that are going to follow you your whole life. But the career choice decision, the which school to go to, the who to date, and it's probably not going to follow you your whole life.
No.
And yeah, you're right. You have no idea who the hell you want to be or how you want to be. You're still trying to figure out if you're trying to like throw it back to 2002 with the bangs like your old man did, or you want to do something else altogether. And I don't know. I think that's that's badass. And the reality is $30,000 might sound like a chunk of money, but what if your son decides just hey, no, I'm going to follow the path, going to go to university right now. You're going to spend that same damn amount of money. It's going to take him 4 years to realize what he can learn in 12 months, just going and blowing $30,000, but now he's got 3 extra years of life to do something.
Well, that's what I was coming up with. My daughter, like I said, she's at Texas State, and I pay $12,000 a year for her apartment. That doesn't include out of state tuition and her gas and her groceries, and she has a little job on the side, so she pays for a lot of her own stuff. But that shit's expensive too. So if I'm gonna give you the money for something, and you're not a college kid, you don't want to go, you hate school, go experience, learn that way. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. There's so many things. There's so many ways to get those experiences without blowing money too. Like, go get a job in the oil fields for 3 to 6 months. You will get a freaking education, and then go get a job with a door-to-door sales company. And then like, you'll make some money, get an education, live a whole different freaking life. And it's not like what you do today doesn't matter. But again, barring herpes and a few other things, maybe a kid, barring a few things, it's not going to follow you around. So like, don't be an idiot, but go experience.
That's what I tell him all the time when he leaves. It's like, as long as you don't add to the population or subtract from it tonight, I'm good with it.
I like that. I like that. It's amazing when you really think back. Like, you remember being that age and it was like, holy cow, I'm so invested in the life I'm living. I have to be here doing this in this moment. And you look back and it's like, do you know how easy it would have been to grab a backpack, like spend $1,000 to get to Europe, and then every time you're broke, spend a week sweeping floors and cleaning shop somewhere, and now you can travel for the next 3 weeks.
I still think about doing that now sometimes. I'm like, you damn kids are weighing me down.
Freaking burdens. No. I love the kid life. I love the family life. It's a good one. But doing it at 18 would have been easier, right?
It would have been. That is the truth. Lowe's, how are you feeling, by the way?
How do you mean?
I mean, your health and stuff. And your wife.
Good. Always just kind of like the way this year's gone, I feel like just, at least for me, I just feel like I'm waiting for the next thing. Like, what's next? Just what's next? So I actually just did another blood panel last week. So waiting on some results to come in, and hopefully that stays the way I want it to, the way I need it to. I don't know. It's just been one of those years. It's made me a little skittish, frankly. But my wife, she's doing so fucking awesome. Like, she is such a trooper and just maintains a good attitude through all of everything. And I'm just super fortunate that I'm able to keep her that drunk to be able to hang out with me. No, I really am fortunate though. She is fucking awesome. So yeah, I appreciate you asking. Yeah. Where were we? I was going to ask you some questions.
Yeah.
I've got good questions. Are you ready for these?
I'm ready. As ready as I'm ever going to be.
Yeah. You look tentative about this.
I'm always tentative. I'm trusting you. I'm having faith there'll be great questions that I can answer.
Now, there are probably some shit questions, but you know, it is what it is. What was the most difficult moment in your entire life?
Oh God, there's been so many. Can you narrow in the focus?
If you had to like take the so many and throw them in a room, turn off the lights and step into that room, which one's going to hit you first?
I went through a period a few years ago where I had just gone through a divorce. My kids were both pretty self-sufficient, so they didn't I have 2 kids of my own. They really didn't need mom. It was Christmas, and I started dating again, went through a terrible breakup. The next month, one of my best friends died unexpectedly. Apparently, she had liver failure. None of us knew what I believe was alcoholism. And it was just like this, like you said, just like the next shoe, and the next shoe kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And it was one of those things where I kind of had to take a step back and look at all of these things that were happening that were out of my control and wondering, like, where do I go now? Like, who am I? You know, my kids that I've done everything for don't need me anymore. I don't have a husband to support. I don't, like, when my best friends is gone, I'm hard to turn to. It was kind of like this whole existential crisis of an identity, trying to figure out who the hell I was that didn't have a title assigned to it. And so I dug into like spirituality and where the answers to the universe were and, you know, who I'm supposed to be. And it was kind of enlightening and, you know, refinding my why, because that's what Simon Sinek and everybody else said you were supposed to do. And it was a really, really emotional time. And what helped me was figuring out my why not.
You don't hear that very often.
Like, not so much, you know, everybody looks, and that's what I've always done is like my why was my kids, you know, I need to make sure they have everything that they need. And when they had everything and I had everything, it was like, why am I still so unhappy? Why am I not fulfilled? Like, yeah, I get it. This bad shit's happening to me, but I have a healthy family. I, you know, have a solid business. I'm in good health. Like, what is the missing link? Like, what's the piece of the puzzle? And so I kind of sat back and said, well, maybe if I move, maybe if I start over somewhere, maybe if I meet new people, you know, get out of this podunk town. And that's when I realized, you know, this is all going to follow me. I take it with me wherever I go. It's not my surroundings that need to change. It's me who needs to change. So what's my why not? Why don't I want some of the things that are happening right now? You know, what are the things that I'm unwilling to settle for, that I'm unwilling to accept? Who are the people around me that I force a fake face in that make me super uncomfortable? And there was a lot of soul searching, and came out on the other side, I feel like better. But it was a rough patch. So I get it when you say, you know, when those chain of events, that domino effect, those dominoes start tumbling, it's like all you can do to pull yourself out of it.
So what's your why not?
And my why not changes. You know, it's different today than what it was back then. I ask questions when I say why not. Questions that I've always doubted before, like, why not buy a store? You know, why not do these things that I want to do? If my why was my kids, I'll kind of flip it on its head and be like, well, a lot of times I'd say, well, I can't do that because I have kids. Well, why couldn't I do it because I have kids? Why couldn't it be this way? Why couldn't I have a $10 million business? Why couldn't I have a $1 billion business? Whatever it might be. I always try to just figure out the questions that I'm not asking and just re-engineer it. So I guess there's not a why not statement. It's more or less why not questions.
What do you think the most significant realization you've had like through that process has been?
Probably that we're our own biggest enemy. Like, I have self-sabotaged myself so many times in life. And I hate all those cliche damn like guru motivational words like boundaries and alignment and flow, and they make
energy.
Like they do. They make me want to throw off. And I think it's just because they're overused. And I think that the original meanings of those terms have gotten so twisted in Western culture that they just don't make any sense anymore. You know, you see people throw stuff up, and sometimes I use them too because I don't have better language for them quite yet. But I think, yeah, like I said, I think realizing that in a lot of situations where I feel like the shit hits the fan, it's because I'm being my own worst enemy. It's because I've set myself up for this exact situation, kind of like we were talking about before with patterns and different behavior. You know, I think a lot of times in life, I've chased people, I've chased success, I've chased, you know, things that for whatever reason at that time weren't meant for me. And I've learned that you almost disrespect yourself every time you chase after these things that have shown you that they don't care about or respect you. You know, I have a friend of mine right now, actually, who she has been in a relationship with this guy for like 8 years. They were moving in together, and she found out about 2 years ago now that he had this whole other family, like an hour away, and they broke up. And for the last 2 years, she's still been seeing him, crying over him, like obsessing over him and how he's going to come back. And he just keeps spitting out excuse after excuse after excuse about why he can't do it right now, but he's coming. Can't do it right now, but he's coming. And I'm like, baby, the only place he's coming is in your house in the middle of the night when he's supposed to be with his other family over there. Can you please stop telling me this sob story? And that's what I told her. You're disrespecting yourself. You're chasing this guy who's shown you repeatedly that he doesn't want anything to do with you with his actions. He can tell you whatever you want. And for a long time, I did the same thing. That's why it's, you know, I have to kind of sit back with a grain of salt and be like, sometimes you just got to stop chasing whatever it is. Just let the balls fall where they're going to fall. So probably.
Is that a metaphor? Let the balls fall where they're going to fall? But did we mean to make that plural?
And just, you know, like I said, especially with success, you know, everybody's chasing success, happiness, purpose, all these different things. And in the grand chase of it, you forget that you're even running.
Yeah.
You know, and then you stop putting one foot in front of the other, and eventually you just burn out.
So what's the resolution to that? Like, what's been your resolution? Do you have like a specific instance or like a moment when it hit you when you were like, I got to be different. Like, I got to do different, you know?
I think there are those moments. I don't think it happens all at one time, though. I don't think it's like, maybe some people do. I'm not that person that's just like the light bulb goes off. Somebody's going to have to like hit me over the head with something a few times for it to kick in, and I might make gradual changes and switches. It's just that when I think I notice it overall in like the somatic experience in my body, and then the way that I treat others without thinking about it. You know, when I get to the point where I cognitively have to go, oh my God, you're in such a mood. Don't be a bitch today. Don't be a bitch. I know something else is wrong. There's something lurking and I need to fix it. And a lot of times I'll just hunker down and try to figure out what it was. But I don't know that there's ever been like that moment where, I was homeless living on a park bench and all of a sudden I was like, I gotta get a job today. It's always been like a learning that had to happen.
So what
have you ever had like a light bulb moment?
I don't know that it's as much of a light bulb as it is like the light bulb was always there, but I've just had this like Vanta black lampshade camping out over it, right? And so it's like the light bulb was there because when it happens, it's not like, aha, what a new idea! I'll invent a wheel, fucking fire. I'm a caveman. No, it's like it was already there, and shit, I've already been doing 90% of it, but how can I expect full-time results, or how can I expect the fullness of results, fulfillment from a half-assed effort or half-assed follow-through or whatever? And so it's less like the light bulb comes on and it's like the light bulb was always fucking on. You just had to quit turning your back to it, And that's, I think, a lot of what I've had in these moments where like, usually I'm in the depths of despair. That's when people do their best thinking. In fact, it's when people tend to do their worst thinking, because good thinking happens with dopamine and serotonin, and that's not necessarily the case when you're in the depths of the despair. But in the depths of despair is when you tend to just sit down and shut the fuck up, and actually listen. So maybe it's not that you're doing your best thinking, it's that you're doing your best listening. And those answers, you'd like to say like the answers come, but they don't come. They were already there. You just quit turning your back to it. It's like, no shit. Like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, And I think those are as close to those moments or those light bulb moments that I've had, like fuck around with substances, end up with addiction problems and behavioral problems, or fuck around with stupid people and you end up doing stupid things. And, be bad with money, you end up doing nothing but worrying about money. And like, it's not aha. It's more like, duh, like, no shit. And I don't know, that's kind of how it's been for me. And I have them all the time. Like, no shit, Carson. And I'm not sure what to do about that yet. Cause I'm like, God, I'm so intelligent, but I'm the dumbest intelligent person I've ever met. What the fuck am I doing? If the light bulb was already on, why did I spend most of my life in the shade?
You make a great point with that, because I think that's a huge problem for a lot of people. I know it was for me too, is that I think, like you said, the light bulb's there, and I like that analogy. Why am I spending so much time in the shade when the light bulb's already turned on? It's like the old, you dim your light for all the people around, and I felt like one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that I was like a little firecracker. I mean, I would fly off the handle at anything. It was like chaos was the environment that I was so accustomed to, that when the environment wasn't chaotic, I made it chaotic, right? Like, there needed to be argument. There needed to be restlessness. There needed to be busyness.
Is that because it was like your comfortable place, or it was a place that you'd figured out how to feel powerful?
It was a place where I felt like I had control. If there was chaos, I was in control, which is kind of weird, right? It was like I could manage the chaos better than sit with the peace. So like, I read this a long time ago, and I'm totally paraphrasing here. So if I get it wrong, I'll fucking to Google it. But it said something about feeling the need to be busy all the time is a trauma response. And it's a fear-based distraction from what you'd be forced to acknowledge if you slowed down. And so to me, I felt like, looking back, that chaos of, not necessarily being productive, but being busy, or, wreaking havoc, or, arguing to make my point, even though the conversation was moot, was just a distraction for me to not slow down and sit with some of the sabotage that I was doing to myself. And when I finally did make peace with the peace, now it's like, you fuck with my peace, you're out. Like, I do not want chaos. I don't even like arguing. I won't even go to places where certain people are because I know their energy drains. Like just being around them and the negativity and just how I know they are, I will not go. Yeah. So I think that's been like a game changer over the years.
I like that. I think in today's day and age, like there's a lot of people that I know that really glorify like the good old days, right? And not just like the good old days back in high school, but like the good old days, like the 1920s. And then I have to remember them that like, if you were there for the 20s, you probably hit the Great Depression too, you know, but I digress. But the good old days, you know, decades ago, even just a couple decades ago when technology, like it's hard to think that literally 20 years ago, you know, high tech was a freaking flip phone and you could play like Tetris on it or something. And that was about it. That was high tech. 10 years before that, you had to like mount a freaking brick with a wireframe mount to your hip to have a cell phone and extend the cord. And like, it's so easy. It is so easy to have the distractions now. It's not that you never get to sit with your piece. You just never choose to because there's always something that is so much more convenient
and comfortable.
You know?
It's uncomfortable to sit with your thoughts. That's why it's so damn hard to meditate.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like you're talking about it and I'm just sitting here thinking, when was the last time I did? Like this has been a shit year and I've done a lot of reflection, but when was the last time I really gave myself time to sit and think with my piece? I can tell you the exact moment and I would like to know yours as well. Mine was would that have been 2020 or 2019? It's like it was like late 2019. And I was in Southern Utah and I'd sent, my wife loves Disneyland. I fucking hate Disneyland. I hate theme parks. And so I will literally pay, like she'll take the boys, but I will literally pay for like her mom and her sister and her friends to go with her. And they'll do just like a girls trip with the kids. I'll pay for everything just so I don't have to go. And normally when they go, I work. Like that's when I'll have a business trip planned. And so I'm out in Dallas, Texas, or I'm out over here, I'm out over there, or I just hole up in the office and just pound through work. But this time I decided not to book up with work. And I literally threw a bedroll and a pillow, my tackle box, a couple guns, and a little bit of food in the back of like an ice cooler in the back of my truck. Like no tent, no nothing, just in the back of my truck like I did when I was in high school, you know? And I cruised up into the mountains up above the town we lived in, St. George, Utah there. And I spent like 4 solid days just like skipping from lake to lake, pond to pond, fishing, doing some small game hunting, hanging out, writing in my journal and just like phone off. And it was just quiet and me and nothing else. And I think that's honestly, Aimee, the last time I sat in silence. I sat with myself long enough to like be real with myself at that level. Like if I'm being honest, and I've done a ton, it's not to say I haven't done reflection and all this stuff, but 4 fucking days of that. I didn't talk to a single other person. I didn't do this. I did that for 4 damn days, which isn't even that long if you think about it. And literally the life that I'm living now, which I would consider an improvement upon the life I was living then. I've started new businesses. I've made new friends, it's an entire different shift in trajectory. And that really was a catalyst because by then, within 6 weeks of that, I walked away from the first insurance agency I had built that, we built into a multi-million-dollar agency, walked away from it, started doing other things. Like it was just this massive catalyst. So you're talking about it, I'm like, shit, I think I might need to go out in the mountains by myself again. But what about you? What was the last time where you were alone with yourself long enough to know yourself?
Sometimes I get to know myself too damn good. No, I every day I usually will spend a couple of minutes, and usually it's random because I'm not a big meditation person or yoga person. I totally wish I could, and I feel like I can get better at it. I just had a good enough coach yet. And I'm not like you have all these women who are like, I go to the spa, I go to get a massage. I don't like that shit. Like I like a spa, like a good hydro spa, but I don't like massage and that stuff every now and then. But anyway.
I'm like a don't touch me person. Hot shave is about as good as it gets. If you're not touching me with a knife, don't fucking touch me.
Well, I would say probably, so funny enough, last week at the slaughterhouse. And I think that's kind of part of the reason why I bought it.
At the slaughterhouse. That's
kind of the reason why I bought it, because my whole mentality for it is like, we're going to do this project. I'm going to get my hands dirty and I'm going to help fix it up and I'm going to learn how to build stuff. And so I went to Home Depot and I went and bought like every DeWalt tool on the shelf with an engine on it. And I went over there and I started just like taking down rafters and boards and cattle gates. And I'm just over there, just radio going, cutting wood, like a damn, Bob the Builder person. But the whole time, it was just like this thoughtless work that when I got done, I wasn't tired. I was energized. I felt like I had accomplished something. I felt like I had peace doing it. And that wasn't the goal, obviously. It was just like, hey, this needs to be done. I'm going to go do it. And so, like you said, I think it's just a lot of those thoughtless work times. Like you said, for me, whether it's fishing in the backyard, just sitting out there, and I'll leave my phone inside because I don't want to be annoyed or whatever else, and just kind of sit with like, what's going wrong? What's going right? How do I handle this situation? Should I ask ChatGPT for an answer?
ChatGPT has some opinions.
He does. He's a very little sassy boy at times.
But for being so sassy, he's so damn compliant, It's like, oh, I can't give you medical. No, I've got a lump in my butt. I need you to fucking tell me, make a diagnosis. I ain't going to the doctor. We ain't playing in that.
And he usually gives you the same responses. So there's that, with a better bedside manner.
Right. It's ridiculous. But no, that's pretty crazy. So, all right, next question. Let's change up here. So I asked you, what was one of those tough moments, and what's the happiest you've ever been, and why? Why did you get that happy?
Happy a lot of the time. It's kind of weird, actually. I do. I find joy in the small things in life, like singing karaoke, and when my son's excited about having a good grade on his test, or my daughter starting a play, they just make me happy. It makes me smile. But as far as happiness, just joy and elation, I can tell you the things that give me that experience. I don't know when the last one was, which is kind of fucking heartbreaking now that I think about it. I like things that make that feeling where your chest just warms up and you're kind of tears in the back of your eyes, but nobody can see them. You just know they're there, kind of thing.
Like when you're watching Saving Private Ryan. You're like,
an old movie, but yes.
They found him. They fucking found him.
I think it's those moments where I'm just I've done something and somebody shows true appreciation. Because I think people are so fake nowadays. I think they fake it a lot and you can see right through it. But outside of for other people's joy, which like I said, my kids light me up all the time. And I don't think there's been just wow, I'm so excited today and happy, just because the little moments all just add up. That was a terrible answer, but it's true.
I'm not here to judge. I just
I haven't had any kids born lately. I haven't. It was really cool to take my daughter to drag queen brunch for her 21st birthday in Vegas a few weeks ago. That was interesting.
Drive queen brunch or drag queen brunch?
Drag queen brunch.
Drag queen brunch. Dudes with dicks and dresses, drag queen.
And big fake boobs too.
Like RuPaul type stuff?
It was RuPaul's drag queen race.
Okay.
Yeah. She had a blast and she was hammered. And I'm like, oh my God. It was just so funny. 21, totally legal.
That was her 21st birthday and mama took her to get hammered.
In Vegas.
How did she feel the next day?
She was good by dinner. We went for brunch.
Does that piss you off when
how did you rally already?
Right? You've got a counter full of Alka-Seltzers and...
I said that the other day. I said, I really don't like drinking that much anymore because we had a ladies' Christmas thing and we hopped some of the different houses in the neighborhood, and at every house there was a different cocktail that they needed. And we went to 8 fucking houses. So needless to say, and I really don't drink that much anymore. And the next day I stayed on the couch and I was like, I cannot function. I'm just going to do Netflix and please keep bringing me food. Like hamburgers, whatever you can bring me, just grease straight out of the vat. Just bring it to me.
Just a bucket of Crisco with a breadstick.
I'm telling you, these kids nowadays, they're complaining so much and they don't realize, like, what's that meme where it's like, I stayed out till 4:00 this morning. I went to work with the same bracelet from last night, same clothes, and I am just chugging along. You were complaining about having to wake up to go to work.
I still do that. I don't know how. Like, I've got a lot of genes that are bad, but I can go hard. And I'm getting to the point, I feel old enough that, like, it hurts me. It hurts me. I wake up and I'm like, God, what did I do? But I say it in my head. I get in the shower and then I go to work. So I'm starting to feel it. But my wife, like, I've got half a decade on my wife. And from the day we got married, like, she's glass of wine and 2 glasses of wine. And she's like, man, tomorrow's like shit and I have the shits. This is awful. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't get it. This is fine. This is life. It's just funny. Funny how different people handle it. But it's catching up with me. What else is catching up with you? We're not going to have that you're getting old talk. That would be inappropriate. Men don't fucking have that conversation with women.
How old are you?
Old enough. Old enough I can get my own drinks.
I have a shirt that said that.
Right.
And actually buy my own drink.
It's funny though. It's like you just start, and I'm sure you've noticed this. You just start, I've noticed every now and then, couple times a year, 2-3 times a year, I'm like, yeah, that's starting to catch up with me. That's starting to catch up with me. You know, I'm not going to walk around barefoot anymore. That's catching up with me. I'm going to wear flip-flops now. And
socks with Crocs.
Socks with Crocs, because that's catching up with me. And
I don't know. I don't feel like much is catching up with me outside I do go to bed a lot earlier just because I like to. I feel better.
That's catching up with you.
Maybe. But I think a lot of good things are catching up with me too. Like I feel like I'm wisdomous. Like, obviously not with that term, but I feel like I've been cracked with the wisdom wand. And I feel like I'm a much more open-minded person than I was back in the day. But I think all goes back to just accepting that you don't have to have a life of chaos in order to have a good life. Like, things don't have to be chaotic. Like, they don't. And the more people, I have people that I'm friends with, people that are in my family, that shit's catching up with them, but the wrong kind of shit. Like, they just, as they get older, they get more ornery and they get more negative and they get more like anxious. And I am completely the opposite. I'm like, let this shit go, you know?
Yeah, I feel that. I just by nature, I am an ornery person. I'm a dick. But I do feel like I was a lot bigger of a dick before. Just, it's so much easier to let it roll off my back and just be drama, block, this, move on. I'm tired, go to bed. Like, I'm done sleeping. Like, it's 4 a.m. Okay, get up. It's 7 a.m. Okay, get up. You know, just so much easier to just, like you say, enjoy the moment that I'm in instead of trying to make something out of it that it's not. So, interesting. Kind of interesting. So, we talked about some of your hard moments, some of your best moments. What are you looking forward to most? For me, it's hard lemonade with a wicker chair on the porch, yelling at kids to get the fuck off my lawn. At that point, I'm too old to chase them. Like, I look forward to that so much. But what is it for you? It's got to have to do with the slaughterhouse, I'm sure, at this point.
It probably would if I knew what the hell that was actually going to be. It would give me a little bit more to look forward to. I'm enjoying the process of that right now and just seeing any little iota of progress being made. Honestly, when I'm kind of like, God, please don't bless me with this now. But I was an only child. Well, I still am an only child. And so growing up, it was like me, that's it. And so I've always liked the idea of big family, but we would have big family functions. Christmas, cousins, aunts, uncles would all come to my grandparents' house. And I always loved that, like the family getting together and just for parties, get-togethers, everything else. Over the years with when Katrina hit and family changing and everything else, it's kind of gotten a little bit scattered now. But like I said, we have 5 kids together. So my daughter's coming home for Christmas. So we'll have 5 kids. We have another one at LSU. So he's going to be home. And they're all 5 going to be in the house. And so it's just fun, like Christmas with all of them. Here, the different personalities, because they're all very, very different. And just sitting around watching them. But I am totally like a baby lover. Like I say all the time, I am the baby whisperer. Like if you give me a baby, I'm going to put it to sleep. If it's crying, if it's whatever. Like I will go up to some lady in a restaurant and be like, I'm sorry, you can't get this little baby to sleep. You want me to hold her? All right, I'm not that crazy, but.
Yeah, I realize you have to like throw that in there.
But what I love about it is that they're not mine and I can give them back. Yeah. So if we're looking at into the far, 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 far distant, like 10, 15 year future, I'd love to have like all these little grandbabies running around and, I'll actually
like 18 months. So reality sets in and there you are, 42, 43 with a grandchild.
No, I'm 42 now. I'm telling one of you right now.
Ooh, 18 months. Your daughter's graduating college right now?
She will graduate this year, December next year.
I mean, I'm just saying things go quick sometimes. Sometimes they don't.
Do not curse me.
I'm not trying. I'm just saying, what a blessing. What a blessing that little child will be.
Well, you know what's so funny? When I had kids, I was broke as fuck. And like, I wanted to have like all these cute little outfits. And I'm like, digging in the bargain bin, like, what can I make out of this? Can I make me a homemade bow and like,
dressing your kid in a potato sack? Yeah.
I just know like when they have kids, it's going to be utter insanity. Like I'm going to be taking them to Disney World and it's definitely going to be one of those. I'm going to be one of those grandparents where like they can do and then I'll send it on.
Get them all riled up and get them all hopped up on monk fruit and stevia and then send them on home. The way to do it. No, it's crazy. My wife and I were talking about that. Like our boys are still young. They're 7 and 9, but it's like she'll be, by the time they're out of college or out of high school and everything, getting done with college, she'll be like early 40s is all. And she's like, holy shit. We grew up, her and I both grew up in Utah. We both grew up in Mormon households and we're not Mormon, but like that's the norm. We got married really young. And even if you're not Mormon, that's just the social norm out west here till you hit like California. But when you're like somewhere between Western Colorado and Western California or Eastern California, it's just like this cultural thing. It's like you're out of high school. It doesn't matter that you're in college trying to get your degree and whatever. You're 20 years old. You make $1,200 a month, get married, right? And start a family. And it's like this cultural thing. It's shocking. Really, when you go travel other places, you're like, oh, holy shit. Like people put their life together first. That's so weird.
It's very similar down south. I just turned 20 when I got married.
I was 20. My wife she had turned 18. I'm literally just like within a couple months of us getting married. And that's like, it was just the social norm. But we look at that and in comparison, and it's like our boys are so young and so beautiful. One of my younger boy, he's sick right now. So I spent the morning home with him. He's got a fever and she's home with him now. And he's just so cute laying there on the floor and just, my God. But it's like, shit, it's one freaking blink and that dude's 18 graduating and not even a whole nother blink later. And if he's like we were, he's married. And it's like, holy shit. Kind of a freak out moment, to be honest.
It changes in an instant. I look back and, you see Facebook memories every day and it makes you wonder where the time went. And all those little moments that you forget that you were busy rushing around but when it pops up, that's what it's kind of like you were talking about. The light's always on. You just got to stop dimming it with the shade. And it's like that. It's like, I don't remember those moments in day one, but as soon as I see him, it triggers it. It's like, how do you remember this? Do you remember when you said that? Do you remember when you did this? Do you remember when we went there? And that's what brings the happiness in life. You know, it's those little things. It's seeing your kids on the floor, or, you know, nursing them back to health, or seeing them graduate kindergarten, or whatever it was.
So there's this Facebook memory that pops up in mine every year. And it's from like 2015, 2016. We ride, I mean, we're out west here. Everybody out west rides dirt bikes and ATVs religiously. So I had this sport ATV, yellow and black. I had the thing built. So Yamaha YFZ 450. I loved that thing. And I was sitting there. I'd just gotten into insurance and finance. And I was still being told, like, if you don't wear a white shirt and tie, you'll never be successful. So there I was in a white shirt and tie. I just gotten home, and my little boy comes out, my oldest comes out, and he was still just like this little thing. And his favorite thing to do when I got home was to meet me outside as I'm getting out of my car. And, you know, the garage door is up and the ATV is right there, the four-wheeler. And so we'd go sit on it, and I'd put it in neutral, and then he would start it, and he would, you know, just loud, and he would start it. And so there's this picture of him and I sitting on there that my wife had snapped, and it comes around every year. And the damn thing is, Aimee, is we still to this day, we ride dirt bikes and ATVs, we go camping, that's what we do. And every time my boys fire up their dirt bikes and their four-wheelers, like, that's what I see, is Jensen sitting there on the four-wheeler with me, just cranking that four-wheeler over, and then clapping as it sits there, pop, you know, so loud that most babies and toddlers would be like, ah, but he's just so stoked every freaking time, a decade later, you know. And it's like, damn, but you forget just those little miracle moments that made it all worth it. You know, when times were so stressful, you had sores. Like, for me, I had this time when I first got into this business that, like, I literally for like 6 months solid had hundreds of ulcers and lesions running down my throat. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't eat. It was just, the stress was so high. But that same photo was taken during those times. And it's the one I go back to. And I'm like, God, what a happy moment amidst all the chaos and the bullshit. And what a moment of pure joy. So freaking worth it. Do you have any moments like that?
Yeah, I mean, all the time. You know, I've heard them called glimmers, which is, I think, really cool. You ever heard of that?
No.
It's like just the little moments that it's kind of like the opposite of a trigger, a glimmer. You know, the things that triggers are the things that in the midst of, or how I think of them, in the midst of everything going right, something will just trigger you, right? Well, they say these glimmers are like the opposite of that, where in the midst of everything going wrong, it's like that little iota of sun beating through that's like, hey, it's going to be okay, you know? And I think they come every day. I think every day it's just like there's a lot of shit that could go wrong, that does go wrong. And if we're willing to see the ray of hope, so to speak, it makes dealing with all this shit, doesn't necessarily make it go away, but it can make it a little bit easier to withstand.
You think folks would be happier if they quit trying to live life, trying to arrive at this place of peace, and just live life like excited for that next glimmer?
Yep. Not even the next glimmer, just the next experience, or the experience that you're in.
Yeah.
You know, so many of us don't. Like, how many times have you eaten your food and 10 minutes later forgot what it tasted like? Like,
every time.
Yeah, like we don't enjoy the experience. We just get through it.
That's a freaking crazy notion. Like, to put it like that, unless you have the garlic burps, you know. But it's like, yeah, how many times do you eat and you don't even remember what it tastes like 10 minutes later? So here we are, like, everybody spends 99% of their life trying to arrive at a place that may not even exist, and look at all the good shit, and you don't even remember what it tasted like because you're too busy scarfing it down to get to the next, you know?
Yep.
Damn, something to think about. Let me ask you this here as we wrap up. I think this is, are you cool with that? Are you cool with one more question?
Yeah.
All right. Let's just say, are you familiar with Pearl Jam?
I am.
Like, how familiar?
Like, I mean, God, it's from like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Like, don't ask me to like list out their albums.
Like, but if we were like, I was out on a date in my...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, oh, where can my baby be? The Lord took her away from me. Okay. We're speaking that language. So, and God forbid, you're out on a date in Jason's car. You hadn't driven very far. They're in the road just up ahead. Car was stalled. The engine was dead. A couple minutes later, you find yourself upside down in that situation. And you're not sure if you're living today or dying today or anything else in between, right? If you can envision that. God forbid, I would never want that for you. I'm going to knock on wood, go home and say prayers for you, I promise. But if you were in that position, you're sitting there upside down, your seatbelt not undone yet, the glass in your eyes, what would you hope you'd been able to give to the world just the day before or just an hour before? If you had had a conversation with your kids, if one of your clients had called and talked to you, anything, what would you have hoped that you could have given in that moment where you weren't sure you would get another?
Love. I would hope that I had given them, shown them that I loved them, and that along the way I've imparted enough wisdom in their hearts to know that they will be okay without me, and that I'll always be with them, and that they'll actually be okay without me. I can feel that way too. A slow death to a Pearl Jam song. But yeah, I would say.
I don't want you to have a slow death to a Pearl Jam song, by the way. But
I would like to know that I have the last moments we had were ones that will leave them with peace and faith in their future in the event of my death, and know that I love them lots.
Is there anything that you haven't been able to give them that would guarantee that would, like you've probably already given all of it, but if there was one last chance, one last opportunity, we get off the podcast here and you're getting in the car. If this was that one last chance and that one last opportunity, now this is turning into a fucking Eminem song, but to seize that.
That's my girl, Anitra.
But like, no, is there anything, I don't get the sense that there's anything that's been left unsaid with you, but is there just anything else you'd want to add to it?
Probably all the passwords to my bank accounts.
We're going to have to talk about that. I'm going to show you how to set up a beneficiary, and it doesn't cost you a damn dime.
No, I am a very, I'm a very affectionate and loving person. So, I mean, I probably tell my kids and my family I love you 18,000 times a day, and in hugs and kisses and snuggles. And no, I'm just grateful for every single one of them. And I like to make sure that they know life is fragile.
That's beautiful. You're a fairly complete. I've talked to a lot of other people that are just not so complete. They're a lot more torn. It's really cool and refreshing to talk to you. You've done some work.
I've been forced to. It doesn't come easy, but thank you. I appreciate you seeing that. Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave folks with before we wrap this up?
No, I think I've said a lot. I mean, but I think that's kind of the key to all of it. The key to peace. If you actually want it, some people don't want it, and that's okay too. Just figure out, what you want, who you are, and if what you're chasing is really something that you're chasing for you, or you're chasing just because you think you need it. Society tells you so.
Can't wrap it up any better. Thanks so much for tuning into the A2C podcast today. I appreciate you joining me on this unfiltered journey into the minds of remarkable people. I hope you enjoyed the candid conversations, the authenticity, and the insights shared. Remember, this is an ad-free podcast, so your support in sharing this with others, well, it means the world to me. If you want to stay connected with me and the podcast and be the first to know about our upcoming guests and episodes, follow me, the podcast, whatever, on social media, A2C Podcast on Facebook, and we'll get our Instagram and everything else set up. At cporter389 is my own personal stuff on all platforms. Your feedback, your ideas, they're invaluable to me. Drop me a message, drop the podcast a message, share your thoughts, let me know who you'd like to hear from next. Together, we're on this mission to explore all the facts of success and life, but be candid as hell about it. So I appreciate you. Come find me, come follow me, and let's do some awesome things together. Appreciate y'all.